the echoes of a gunshot that marked a pivotal moment in history, the sudden death of a civil rights icon, and swirling questions that persist decades later. Was the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. simply the act of one man, or is there more to the story lurking beneath the surface? Welcome to another gripping episode as we dive deep into the mysteries and conspiracies surrounding Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. If you're as fascinated by the untold stories of history as we are, make sure to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more eye-opening content. Let's unveil the truth together. He was the recipient of the 1964 Nobel Peace Prize for his work for racial equality in the United States, president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, and the most prominent African-American leader in the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. On April 3, 1968, he arrived in Memphis and checked into the Lorraine Motel. He had come to the city to show his support of striking sanitation workers. Across the street from the motel were a series of run-down buildings. One of the buildings was a rooming house, run by Bessie Brewer. Shortly before 6 p.m. on April 4th, Tenant William Anschutz found the building's communal bathroom locked. Inside the bathroom, career petty criminal James Earl Ray loaded a high-powered rifle and took aim at room 306 of the Lorraine Motel. Martin L. King emerged from room 306, accompanied by associates he had been conferring with throughout the day. Within a minute, a lone shot tragically ended his life. No direct witnesses could confirm the exact origin of the bullet. Many speculated it was fired from the bushes on a nearby incline, a location notably closer than the aforementioned window. In his escape, Ray dumped the high-powered rifle used in the murder and his overnight bag wrapped in a bed spread at the door of the Canapé Amusement Company. Witnesses saw a white car, possibly a Mustang, quickly drive away from the scene. Ray, a white supporter of segregationist George Wallace, was a career criminal who'd been convicted at least 4 separate times for robbing a cafe, a taxi, a post office, and a grocery store. A year before, he'd escaped from Missouri State Penitentiary while serving a 20-year sentence and was on the lam at the time King was shot. An international manhunt led to his capture in June 1968 at Heathrow Airport in London, where he was caught carrying 2 fake Canadian passports. On March 10, 1969, he pleaded guilty to the murder and was sentenced to 99 years in prison, which increased to a 100-year sentence after he briefly escaped in 1977. 3 days after his conviction, Ray began claiming he was just a pawn in a larger conspiracy. He announced that he had been pressured into pleading guilty and pointed to a man named Raoul as the real shooter. Walter Fauntleroy, the chairman of the King subcommittee, believes that the conclusion Ray worked alone could be incorrect, pointing out that Ray must have had help escaping the country. He believes that there was, in fact, a conspiracy involved. Fauntleroy looked at Ray's movements leading up the assassination. On April 23, 1967, he escaped from a prison in Missouri, where he was serving a 20-year sentence for robbery. Initially, he fled to Chicago, and in July to Montreal. He used the fake name Eric Starvo Galt and obtained faked passport and seaman's papers. He claimed that Raoul was the one that initially got him the passport and papers. He alleges that his inaugural task for Raoul involved smuggling illegal goods over the U.S.-Canada border near Detroit, a job for which he received $750. Subsequently, he was instructed to head to Birmingham, Alabama. There, armed with $2,000 given by Raoul, he bought a white Mustang on August 30, 1967. Both then proceeded to Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, engaging in another illicit operation. After completing their tasks there, they relocated to Los Angeles to await the next set of directions. In mid-March 1968, Raoul instructed him to move to Atlanta. On March 29th, Raoul detailed their forthcoming criminal agenda. He requested Ray to purchase rifles for demonstration to potential clients. Later that day, they drove to Birmingham, where Ray acquired a .243 caliber rifle equipped with a telescopic sight. Witnesses say he seemed unfamiliar with firearms. Raoul, apparently dissatisfied with the first purchase, told him to buy another rifle. Ray complied, obtaining a Remington Game Master. He claims to have handed this new rifle over to Raoul on April 3rd, marking the last time he saw it. According to official records, this was the very rifle used in the assassination. At 3:30 p.m. on April 4th, James Earl Ray alleges that he met Raoul at a neighborhood cafe. Raoul instructed him to secure a room at Bessie's boarding house and told him to stand by for additional directions. Following Raoul's instructions to the letter, Ray rented a room at 4 p.m. under the pseudonym John Willard, bringing along an overnight bag merely to keep up appearances. Raoul also specified that the white Mustang should be parked outside the boarding house, as he had plans to use the vehicle later in the evening. Ray asserts that he left the premises at around 5 p.m. Prior to 6 p.m., he drove the Mustang to a nearby service station for an unspecified reason. At precisely 6:01 p.m., Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. was assassinated by a gunshot. Both Fauntleroy, a presumed acquaintance, and Ray's legal team have expressed skepticism regarding Ray's supposed involvement in the assassination. They argue that given Ray's apparent lack of expertise in marksmanship, successfully executing such a precision shot would be unlikely. Conversely, an FBI investigator involved in the case counters this argument by stating that the telescopic sight affixed to the rifle, in conjunction with the relatively short distance between the boarding house and the Lorraine Motel where Dr. King was standing, would have made it relatively straightforward for even an amateur marksman to accurately target and shoot Dr. King. Some believe that the bullet that killed Dr. King did not come from the boarding house, but instead the bushes below. 2 witnesses believed that the shot had come from the bushes. 2 other witnesses, including Dr. King's driver, believe that they saw a man dressed in white running from the bushes just after the shooting. However, no conclusive evidence can prove that the shot came from the bushes. According to the official version of events, a tenant at the boarding house, Charles Stevens, saw Ray running down the stairs of the boarding house just seconds after the shooting. However, Ray's attorney, Jim Lassar, notes that Charles was too inebriated to be verifiable. One of the committee members claims that they did not rely on him for a positive identification. They instead relied on him being able to say that he had heard a loud noise from the bathroom and see someone run by him. Another of Ray's attorneys claims that Charles only came forward for the reward. According to the official events, Ray, in a panic, dropped his bedspread, rifle, and overnight bag in front of the Canipe Amusement Company. However, a former defense investigator claims that nobody would do that, no matter how panicked they were. Some believe that this was a setup and the items were placed there. A dusting of the room Ray supposedly shot from revealed several unidentified fingerprints. None belonged to him. While 2 prints on the rifle were linked to Ray, it was never shown that the specific rifle was used to kill Dr. King. It was only shown that the killing shots were consistent with the rifle. A swab test was never done to determine if it had been fired. However, a spent shell was in the chamber. While the FBI never found a man named Raoul connected to Ray, former defense investigator Harold Weisberg learned that Ray had been in contact with a man named James C. Howe, J.C. Harden. Harden had called Ray from Atlanta and gave a message to the manager of the hotel that Ray was staying at. When Ray did not call him back, Harden went to California to meet with him. Some believe that Harden might have actually been the mysterious Raoul. They believe that he planned the crime for Ray to take the fall. The FBI investigated the lead long enough to have a composite made of Harden. However, he was never identified or located. For unknown reasons, Ray has refused to say whether or not Harden and Raoul are the same person. He also has refused to positively identify Raoul. House Select Committee. Chief Counsel G. Robert Blakely sums up the case by revealing that the FBI did not pull an adequate investigation, and Ray was arrested by a rush to judgment to quickly arrest an assassin. Coretta Scott King's journey towards doubting James Earl Ray's guilt in the assassination of her husband, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., remains somewhat veiled in mystery. However, her suspicions about the FBI's involvement were vocal and immediate following the tragic event. During a 1999 press conference, she stated, "There is abundant evidence of a major high-level conspiracy in the assassination of my husband, Martin Luther King, Jr. This theory persisted until her passing in 2006, yet has never been definitively proven. Given the contentious relationship between the FBI and the King family, her skepticism seemed anything but unfounded." According to John McMillian, a history professor at Georgia State University, Coretta's mistrust stemmed from a deeply reasonable place considering the Bureau's past actions. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, the FBI engaged in relentless surveillance and harassment of Dr. King, his family, and close associates. Wiretaps were installed on his phone lines, his movements were constantly monitored, and the agency seized opportunities to exploit his vulnerabilities. In one staggering episode, the FBI sent Dr. King a tape allegedly containing audio evidence of an extramarital affair he was involved in. Accompanying the tape was a sinister letter that threatened public humiliation unless he took his own life, purporting to have additional evidence of other affairs. Lloyd Jowers, who owned Jim's Grill, dramatically altered his previous stance and publicly declared that he was part of a conspiracy to assassinate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. For 25 years, Jowers had consistently rebuffed any implication that he had knowledge of or involvement in the case. However, he then claimed that the actual gunman was a Memphis police officer who had fired the fatal shot from the bushes situated behind his establishment. According to Jowers, the officer subsequently handed him the weapon used in the assassination. Jowers alleged that he concealed the rifle behind the bar, and that it was later retrieved by a man named Raoul, who then supposedly disposed of it in the Mississippi River. As a result of these startling revelations, additional witnesses from Memphis began to step forward. One of these was an ex-girlfriend of Jowers. She testified that she had seen him in possession of the rifle shortly after the fatal shot was fired. She also claimed to have witnessed him disassemble the rifle and stash it away behind the bar. In 1997, Dexter King, son of King, went to see Ray in prison where he asked him about his involvement in his father's death, to which Ray answered that he didn't do it. Dexter told Ray that he'll do everything in his power to see the justice prevail. James Earl Ray died in 1998. The King family and others believe that the assassination was carried out by a conspiracy involving the U.S. government, as alleged by Lloyd Jowers in 1993, and that Ray was a scapegoat. In 1999, the King family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Jowers for the sum of $10 million. During the trial, both the family and Jowers presented evidence alleging a government conspiracy. Court heard many witnesses, Jowers claims, and an FBI agent who confessed of finding evidence in Ray's car in 1968, connecting him to Raoul but had withheld it until 1997. The government agencies accused could not defend themselves or respond because they were not named as defendants. Based on the evidence, the jury concluded after that Jowers and others were part of a conspiracy to kill King. In 2000, the report created by Assistant Attorney General Barry Kowalski found that Jowers had changed his story over and again, and that neither he nor the ex-FBI agent were credible. Campbell said Jowers had been recorded saying that he would tailor his story for financial benefit. Are there lingering questions regarding the events surrounding the assassination of Martin Luther King? Like most high-profile cases, some uncertainties remain. However, among experts in law and history, there's a general agreement that James Earl Ray was the individual who pulled the trigger, even if he may not have acted entirely on his own.